All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayyid on drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So this is a chit chat. I'm going to try to show you Luffy. Some of the new cool beans have been asking for Luffy. He's sitting here sleeping. So I'm going to disturb him a little bit. My apologies to Luffy beforehand. So this is Luffy. Poor thing was sleeping. That is why he is. What are you doing, Luffy? You want to go back to sleep? Today he is a little calm. He was sleeping, that is why he's calm. So one more. Okay, Luffy, you can go. All right, so he took off. He doesn't want to be here anymore. Okay, so Nipa says at 8:40 a.m. now on my way to clinic. Bye, Nipa, and have a great day. Barbara says he's gorgeous. Yes, he's so nice. He's very loud for his size. John Snyder says, come back and it's a cat. Correct. Sleepy Luffy. Yeah, he was sleepy. He just took off. I'm sure he's cursing me in his own cat language. Okay. Margaret says no sound or video. Can you hear me? Okay, so this is a interesting question. So Jamile Zal says, "Hi, Dr. Bean. Will you take the booster? And do you think ivermectin works for Omicron?" I have kept all the ivermectin questions to be taken on the Odyssey. So there are some questions on the Patreon as well. So I would answer those questions over there. The initial part, the booster, that is a question still that I am mulling with. Fortunately, the boosters have not become part of the definition of complete vaccination. And because of that, we are still okay if we don't take the booster. We'll see what happens next. I am yet not, I'm not convinced that booster are yet needed. And the reason for my um, thinking that way is that I believe that antibody waning is not actually a failure of the antibody. This is a normal mechanism. So the companies that are pushing the antibody waning to then say, go get a booster, for some people it is important who may have immunosuppressed state or immunocompromised state or taking immunosuppressing drugs or cancers or bone marrow issues and so on, or immunosenescence or the immune system is older. In theory, not everyone needs a booster. And I also feel that the virus has not mutated enough. We'll see what Omicron does, but I think virus is not mutated enough to warrant a booster. And if there is going to be a booster because the virus has mutated, the only benefit of this booster is just to ramp up the immune system because this booster is not really targeted at this virus. So TN says, thank you for all you do. You're very welcome. Buzzard says they're talking now of boosters every 3 months. European countries moving towards mandatory vaccination, which would result in getting boosted every 3 to 4 months. That would be a sad thing. And this is why Peter Doshi said that this is a drug, because your drugs stop working once the drug's time is over. Although it is a vaccine, but he has a point that, hey, the way it behaves, or we are making it behave. Helen says it's being pushed heavily here in the UK. Again, so I am at odds. So I'm a pro-vaccine person who has vaccine myself, my family, but I'm at odds with the way vaccines are selected. Even the latest, after Omicron, the very first thing that happened here in the US was strong recommendation everybody get a booster. Why? Because there is Omicron. So you are afraid and scared right now. So go get the booster. The thing is, and they continue to say everybody gets a booster to simplify it. I just do not agree with that kind of simplistic approach. Wisdom Listen says, Dr. Bean, can you comment on factor 4 laden regarding vax and COVID? Please, love your work. Thank you very much. So, factor 5. Tell me, give me the question, what is about factor 5 and the vax? Kirk says, if the R naught of Omicron is so low in Israel and other places, why so much concern? So that is the thing. Is it the virus who has or which has a smaller R naught, or is it the society is shutting down and blocking everything and stopping everything and saying, okay, don't. And even then, R naught would drop. R naught is just not virus dependent, it is dependent upon other things as well. So, don't know exactly. What I heard was the R naught for this virus is 2. If it is 2, again, that is not a scientific study, that was an article. If it is 2, then it is actually slower than Delta in spread, which would be a good thing. So Zach has a good question. Does the body produce spike proteins forever after the vaccine? No. And I have done a video about that, that will we produce spike protein forever? And it is interesting. Thank you, Zach, for asking this question, because a researcher, I think somebody who knows someone whose study I have discussed, or they themselves, their study I have discussed, they said you should have talked about how long we can produce antibodies, and spike protein can produce, messenger RNA can produce spike protein. And the thing is, I have talked about this thing already many months ago. And I did a lot of hard work at that time to do this, to understand what each cell, how many ribosomes are in there, how many proteins they're kind of making, what time will they give to this messenger RNA from the vaccine to make the spike proteins, how long this would stay, and so on. So I did a detailed discussion. Similarly, there was someone who commented yesterday that why don't you talk about vitamin D's and nutrition? And the last 2 years, I've been talking about those things. So it is interesting that sometimes folks actually do not bother to even look for what is in the channel. There are more than 1,000 topics I've covered, and they just ask me that somehow I am at fault. I cannot pack every piece of material in every single talk. But Zach, I've done this discussion. Heart, Heart and Soul says that lovely cat does have an attitude. Yes, he does. Zach, you're very welcome. One more request from the cool beans here who are new. Please, when you ask a question, I should not and I cannot offer a personal advice. So if you say, I have this situation, so Luffy's back. I have this situation and I need a response to that situation. I cannot respond to that, and I should not respond to that, because it is unethical to sit here on the internet and advise. Yes, it is interesting that there are even journalists or pundits that are advising everyone, but it is actually not correct. So we can talk in the terms of mechanisms or hypothetical situations, but not specific to someone. So this is a good question. JMJM1 says, can you donate blood if you're vaccinated? Ideally, yes, you can, but the blood receiving groups have their restrictions to say if you have received a vaccine, do not donate it. I think they're trying to make sure that the vaccine particles or maybe the antibodies do not cause allergic reaction, or maybe their purification processes are not up to speed with that. So they're just being extra cautious. And Apple Dumpling says, Red Cross says no. So Joanne has a good question. Joanne, would you discuss your thoughts, if not too controversial, about the doctors having their licenses suspended for not taking vaccine, and any Steelman argument for this action? So I retweeted this morning. I do not know if it was correct or not, but there was a medical board that had suspended a doctor's license, and it was kind of a mean letter, because at the end of the letter they did say to that person that if you seek licensure in other places, we will be bound to inform them of this license discussion or this license thing. Let me see. And I tweeted and said, I can't imagine such things are happening. This virus's damage is beyond just the COVID disease. And so again, I do not know it is true or false, but somebody had uh, tweeted this letter. And at the end, they are saying, finally, if you seek licensure elsewhere, we will be obliged to report this as a relevant information regarding your licensure in New Brunswick. Brunswick. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And this was just so going after the licenses because somebody is not vaccinated. You could say that, fine, don't work in this hospital or that hospital, and then they can go find a job somewhere. They saying that we're going to take your license away, that I had never thought that we'll see that. So Stephanie says, will home COVID test detect Omicron? So the it depends. Omicron has, of course, some mutations that are defeating some tests, but these are more professional tests. I am sure that home test would also have some sort of a impact, but I do not know which test. I believe FDA at some point is going to update their site to say following tests are okay and following tests need to be updated, or possibly the test companies will test it and then come back and probably recall or say that our tests are fine. So too early to tell. So Suresh says, when scientists told not to take vaccine, why did government force us to take the vaccine? So that is a good question. I do not feel great about the mandates. I think, and I have been saying this, that my position has not changed. I have been saying this for a long time, that the approach could be more wise, and that could be to stay in touch with the nation, with the community, provide them help in many ways, not just vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. Tell them about vitamin D, tell them about good hygiene, tell them about the benefits of it. People are saying, let's say, masks do not work. Work with them to show them the studies and show them the benefit, demonstrate those things to them, develop an engagement with the people, develop a trust with the people. If there are people who are getting injured by the vaccines, be open about it and say, we understand that this is happening, and if it is happening, here is how we are managing this. And that trust that would develop, then you can use that trust to then talk about the vaccines or not vaccines, instead of saying, you know what, you're going to lose your job or you're going to have this. And this is happening. Me, I cannot control it. Look what is happening to Dr. Marek, and this is happening to so many people. It is I have been saying it, I'm a small voice. It is, these things are happening to me who just teaches. So the ones who are practicing, and I am vaccinated. So Lusek says, what are the primary reasons we do not purposefully engineer a highly transmissible, minimally virulent variant? Is it the danger of highly transmissible variant then possibly gaining virulence? Yes. Or maybe we think that it is not that virulent, but in some people and their immune system may not be good enough to handle it. So we might actually end up causing harm. But this is actually a very good idea. And vaccines are sort of a similar thing, but they have more things to them. But generally, this is the line of thinking for vaccines as well. But that is a little more controlled. Paul Borg says some lawyers are being fired for not taking vaccines. So Jesus Save says, should a pregnant lady who already had COVID then received one Moderna shot prior to pregnancy get the second shot? Just your opinion, of course. So my opinion based on the data from CDC. So you trust CDC. CDC has a study attached on their site which shows that vaccine during the pregnancy actually did not cause any further increase in spontaneous abortions. So, from that study's point of view, it is actually fine. But this is a very delicate subject because it is mother, it is child, it is two lives together. So, this has to be um, discussed with the doctor so they can understand the appropriate body's situation, the person's immune system, their body, and then decide what to do. But from the study's point of view, it seems to be fine. Has Luffy had her Frankenshot? So Luffy, poor Luffy, because he had decided that he wanted to go out a few months ago, we had to get him vaccinated. So I still remember when he got his all the vaccines in one go. For next 2 days, he would not get up from his bed, and he was just knocked out. And so yes, he has his. He's sitting here is being cute. He has his vaccines and he goes out. So Janine says, search CDC, nothing about treatment of COVID-19. Has Dr. Fareed Jalali been heard about the serotonin problem in late COVID? No. I don't think anybody is really seriously heard about the possible solutions. Susan Law says, what is the sweet spot of when the second shot should be taken? If 3 weeks is too soon, what is too long? So I would use UK. So again, I stay within the framework of data so that at least there is something backing up what I'm saying. UK's distance between the two shots is 84 or 87 days. 87 days. I think 87 days, yes. And they have actually shown that this was very successful. So, Jeev George says, your thought, should we have messed with this spike protein since we don't understand its capability? Um, Messed in what way? Making a vaccine from it? I think that was a natural thing to make a vaccine with the part that was uh, attaching with the cells. I would have hoped that we should have made a vaccine with the whole virus. So China has a whole virus, India has whole virus inactivated virus vaccines. So these would have been great as well. So Dr. Bean, how's your wife feeling? Will she get a booster? So again, the same thing. I don't think that at this time. So she actually had side effects. She's still for a couple of months now. Her joint pains became better. Her fatigue and um, tiredness and sleepiness really improved. Now, what is left is she still has confusion, which brain fog, but to a lesser extent. That is, she is operational. Her joint pains have gone. They maybe once or twice in 2 months, in 2 weeks, she sometimes say, I have joint pains. But that continuous joint pains for a few months that were happening, these are gone. Fatigue is reduced a lot. She has started walking again for miles and miles, and she is fine. Uh, Her latest side effect that is at this time off and on is the I would consider that to be Bell's palsy, and that is one side of her face becomes burning and itching and has paresthesias, and then it becomes okay. So fortunately, it comes and goes, and just like with her other uh, joint pains and body aches, this would also go away, but she is still going through this. So I had said to her was, again, at the end of the day, it is her decision, but I had said to her was that please do not go for adenovirus. If you wanted to have it, then messenger RNA. Jeev George says, do you think that the heart risk abstract is false, or is it possible to be true since it is published in a reputable journal? So, look, heart damage or cardiac inflammation, we've been talking about it for months now. It is possible. I believe you're talking about the one in which the cardiologists had said that according to the heart risk assessment protocol they use, after the second dose of the vaccine, the risk increases from 12% to 25%. Many people stop here. I actually saw a comment a few days ago as well, where somebody said to me in an insulting way, and then said, do you not know that the heart risk increases to 25%? What they keep chopping off of the sentence is that they said for 2.5 months. So afterwards, that risk went back down. So that means there is a risk to heart for 2.5 months after this second dose in some patients, and then it recovers. That means they need a lot of observation and management and care during that time, because that can become a bigger risk. So I think these are the kind of things I had been talking about in the beginning as well, that we should understand where the risks are, where are the side effects, and then we should figure out how to manage them. The problem has become that there is so much of the mess that people are going to die, and I do not know what is going to happen, that the actual side effects that are legitimate side effects that we should be focused on and trying to manage them have become diluted in this overall bigger picture. And I am it is many of the doctors who have added this discourse in the community. Thank you very much, butterfly kiss. Uh, Caroline Stone, I second that statement. Thank you very much. Trillium Lane says, have you read the paper by Bruce Hindmarsh, Till We Have Faces and Enhance COVID-19 Public Policy? No. So I have done something. I was talking with the organization this morning. They were asking me if I can join their platform. And I was discussing that I have chosen a very specific way of approaching COVID service that I can do. We are all trying to figure out one way or the other. Some are serving, some are using, but we are all helping in some way for everyone. The part that I could take was to teach. And so that is the part I took. That is to some extent under my control. I can go read a study, I can present it, I still make errors, but I at least very genuinely I try to teach and bring enough information to you that you can make your decisions. Then there are so many other battles that need to be fought, and I do not have much control over them. So I try to keep my brain cycles going on these. This has actually made me a little naive as well throughout this 2 years' time, because when I lift my head and look around, there is so much other things that are happening. There's so much political things that are going on that I have just missed them. So Nicola says, shouldn't these vaccines be suspended until the source of the side effects is discovered and removed? I think that at this time they actually know the sources of those. I think the more important question is, should they not focus on the side effects and start making a plan to help with that? Dina says, so nice to hear that your wife is getting better. Thank you very much. But this is what, 6 months of continuous up and down. And messenger RNA, I had it, it didn't do that to me. Uh, Fingers crossed, I hope it doesn't happen. My sons, Pfizer and Moderna, they were fine too. Adenovirus and my wife, that was just not the best outcome. That is a good one. Frankentronic says, "How about we all give the wonderful Dr. Bean some thumbs up?" Yes, that works. Uh, GG says, "Why do I still have elevated blood pressure and pulse after one I had dose of Pfizer?" Please talk with your doctor to see your cardiovascular system health. This is important to talk with them. Get your tests done. Benzobene. So, Benzo, thank you very much for those links. It was really good to be able to discuss them. Is there a standard set of blood tests that people can do to explore if they may be at risk of getting those rare clots in response to vaccines? So, before the vaccine, we don't have those tests. We cannot say. The only one area that we know is that patients who have had heparin induced thrombocytopenia, we ask them to not take it because they may have it. But other than that, there is no other indicator. And this is where I feel we are falling behind. It is 2 years into it, and we are not focusing on these things. And I think it is probably because the healthcare authorities, administrations, they just had their eyes closed and said, give everyone a vaccine and we'll be okay. And this would all be soon gone. And because they hung their hat on that one um, monotonous path, they never looked around to see what else is happening. They actually, I think, deliberately did not look around. And now there is a mess that is created. And at some point, they will have to look at it. I am surprised that doctors continue to tell the patients that this is psychological and you are fatigued and not fatigued. And I even see youngsters, a tragedy in the youngsters? Those youngsters who develop vaccine side effect or COVID long haul, their colleagues, their peers make fun of them that you are just making it up. That again, if there was a recognition from a central authority to say, we realize this is happening, guys, folks, people, we are at risk if we don't take it. This is how much the risk reduces, and then this is how much the people are getting these side effects. They are not crazy, they are not making up things, they are not looking to just sit at home. And here is how we will help them. Here is a pool of insurance money to help these patients for their follow-ups, and we will make them whole, and we'll make sure this doesn't happen. Imagine the comfort in the society. And they would not have to spend billions of dollars. It would have been smaller amount of money that can get them and people connected better and people to become a little better managed than where we are at this time. So Rachel says, I am vaccine injured from messenger RNA for 9 months now. Do you think it is safe for people hypothetically to get another dose if all doctors say you just have anxiety? So please watch the interview I had from Sean. He developed side effects after the first dose and then decided to have the second dose. And since then, he is not out of it. I was actually hoping to request Sean once again to come back here. So, this is a very, very important question. I cannot give a generalized answer. This needs to be looked at by the doctor to do the labs to understand where is a problem and then see how to move forward. If your own primary care is not helping, maybe there are so many other groups, and I have no financial interest with them. Dr. Bruce Patterson or Incel DX, my only interest with them is every once in a while I request them to come onto my show and we talk about what their research is. Other than that, I have no financial or any other connection with them or contact with them or use of them. They have some good programs as well, expensive but good. And now that is a thing, this expensive part should have been taken care of by the authorities. We should have agreed and acknowledged that this is happening, and let's help the people. So Derek says if the vaccine companies state they do not have enough data or effects on pregnant women, breastfed infant or milk production, excretion, how does the CDC? So this is correct that during the um, trials, most of the trials, they said they didn't have enough data. However, there were trials continued, and so the CDC data that you see, the study that has the data in it. So CDC is not making up a statement. CDC has data available. Now, how good or bad that data is, how repeatable that is a different discussion. But at least there is some data to look at. And I am so if, for example, there is no one pregnant in my home, my household, and so for me to talk about pregnant women is kind of not the right thing. Similarly, instead of we who don't have someone who's pregnant and are concerned about them, instead of we fighting about it, the best is if somebody has a genuine concern, at least look at that data to understand what does it mean. So Connie White says sinusitis, running nose, congestion never stops after COVID, mast cell issue. So some variants of the COVID do keep the upper respiratory area, especially the sinuses and nasal area, congested for a long time. So really, it does recover, but one has to have the management therapies, which most of the doctors do not give. It does recover. Diana says, for sure, thank you for your dedication, your hard work. Love everything you do. Thank you very much. Um, so Rachel says Dr. Bruce Patterson doesn't hasn't released his research on CCR5. I'm on Incel DS program taking ivermectin, but I'm curious as to why. No idea. So I haven't talked, meaning behind the scenes, I don't have that many interactions. I am so busy in business, people's complaints, and managing them, and then these teachings, that I have very less time. I mean, than my family, I have very less time to really look around. Ralusek says, have you seen EMA report on biodistribution of mRNA? Any concern of endocytosis, protein expression in sensitive tissue? Most happens at injection site, local lymphatics, but some found in brain and heart. Yes, not only I have seen it, I have done two discussions about it, and it is a um, painful story for me. The reason for that is the very first time I discussed it, folks were not happy because they thought I should have said that messenger RNA goes to various tissues, but that is not what that biodistribution paper said. So then I went to a friend who connected me with a friend in Japan, her friend in Japan, who sat down with me over Zoom, and we went over the paper. It was in Japanese, line by line, to once again make sure that what I was saying and what he was reading, they were matching. So I was correct that this was not messenger RNA going to various tissues, it was the lipid nanoparticles parts that were going. So I discussed that, which triggered a person on Twitter who is triggered since then till now, and that person continues to complain about me to wherever they can. And this, as much as it is an important topic, it's a biodistribution document, and I believe that those doctors who have used this document to continue to say that messenger RNA goes to various tissues like ovaries are actually not looking at the right translation. And the reason I am so particular about these things is the following. One, I teach, so I try to. I'm human, I make mistakes, but I try that the teaching is according to medical needs. I can't put politics in the teaching. I'm teaching medicine, number one. Number two, we should look at, there are, just like reality is worse than the fantasy or whatever. uh, we in reality we have legitimate bad things that are happening, and when we cook up bad things, then the actual bad thing, the legit bad thing, and the fantasized bad thing, when they're mixed, then the both of them get discarded, and people are just called crazy and fringe and dismissed. That is because of those extra incorrect concepts that have been tagged on to the actual problems. So the actual problems are not getting an airtime or attention because of this. So that is what I think is an incorrect um, outcome. So very good. I can look at that as well. Messenger RNA protein expression. Sure, I'll look into it. So Barbara, this is a very important thing. That biodistribution study, at least, if Ralusek is asking about something else, I'll have to look it up. At least that study was talking about four parts of the lipid nanoparticle. Two parts are made up of the substances that are already in our body, cholesterol and surfactant, and the other two parts were new and they were curious about them. That's what was the basic paper. So, so these are all those questions that I have already gotten beaten up for. Jeev, this is another question. Your thoughts on injection on shoulders. So there is a very popular person who has been talking about this as aspiration and has made it a mainstream thought that this is something to do with aspiration. There may be, but I have done a couple of talks about it with anatomy and the structures and the discussion of the structures and the immune system's behavior to discuss that what are the possibilities of this common, how common can this be, and how common could it be that men get more versus women, and then the second shot has it more than the first, and so on. So it is worth watching those talks. Joe and Dr. Bean, you briefly mentioned in a talk about Japanese researchers wanting to do a study on ivermectin, but Merck didn't allow. I have forgotten if I said it. Is it possible if you can reference to me? Maybe I can listen to that message and that can jog my memory. Connie says, I had chronic fatigue syndrome 30 years ago, so I am wondering if that has anything to do with my reaction to COVID. Um, It is possible. There are people, again, I cannot say specifically what is the situation for you, but there are people who have their immune system responding in a specific way and they could respond that way again. Derek says, could you cover some recent news about AstraZeneca vaccine? That it's triggering blood clots, that the vaccine acts like a magnet and attracts platelets, which body mistakes for a threat and attacks. Um, I talked about it, I believe, beginning of this year, multiple times. And I even before it was discovered as a mechanism, I gave a talk that I think the mechanism is this based on heparin induction induced thrombocytopenia and based on the knowledge of immune system. And I said this would be platelet factor 4 related antibody issue. And at that time I was dismissed and I got many angry calls and everything. We have talked about it and many times, and then the researchers came out and they said exactly what I was talking about. And it is unfortunate. The important outcome of this should be that we figure out how to manage these patients so they do not end up in serious condition. Heart and Soul has a good question. Vaccine doesn't prevent transmission, infection, or hospitalization. One third in hospital vaccinated in Massachusetts. Injury risk. Any other vaccine perform this poorly? Um, I do not think that there is any other vaccine that performs this poorly. But at the same time, this vaccines, now you're going to be upset with me. I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, it has really helped a lot as well. The My approach to the vaccine was, yes, they are good. Select people should get them. And we should be very careful for what are the side effects. We should go deep in those. We should have, look, the whole world is doing researches. Imagine if you sent a call out, you are WHO, imagine. And you went out and you said to scientists and researchers and said, we are using vaccine as a way out. Please do everything. Your research is, you're looking here, you're looking there. Please look on the vaccine related stuff. Tell us more. Then you reach out to clinicians and say, here are the things that we are seeing. Please see these medicines. Can they help or not? Or do trials on those medicines. And we find out a very pristine, correct way of looking at what is a side effect, how to manage it. But those kind of focused, laser focus is not seen, because I think that the vaccine and vaccine related side effects are just, these side effects are dismissed as anti-vaccine behavior. And so not only they're dismissed, they're shunned and they're shamed and they're attacked. That is wrong. So look, I do not know if I can change your mind or not, cosmic alien. But when we say this, they are not really vaccines, they are therapy, mandated therapy. You know what happens is, when we say, so let's say you believe in it and you're saying it, and there is a problem with the vaccines that we need to be addressed as well. But when we approach it uh, in these words, they just dismiss us, saying, well, you just don't even think that this is a vaccine, so what are we going to do about it? So I think the right approach, either we change the world and say the whole world get behind us, or the right approach will be, and by the way, I am vaccinated, my whole family is vaccinated, I'm a pro vaccine person. Before the vaccines came, I was talking about vaccines, and when they would be available, I'll take them. However, I have always been talking about the vaccine side effects and talking about how do we manage them, how do we reduce the risk. I once even did dare to create a chart, which I did on a video, and now Rima and I have to work on that once more, to say this age group, this vaccine is the best. This ethnicity, this vaccine is the best. So I think those kind of charts and maps and helps should have come in. So Brendan Cox says, why would you advise against J&J adenovirus vaccine specifically as opposed to the messenger RNA vaccine? I'm concerned with vaccine injury avoidance. So I have done this discussion many times before, and this is based on the data that adenovirus based vaccines in women under 50 years of age have been seen to cause more clotting issues. My wife has adenovirus based vaccine as well, and she has more side effects than us. So, for women, after even my wife suffering, I just have a very simple statement in my head. I have never forced it on anyone, but in my head, it is women under 50, adenovirus based vaccine, all data points show that there is a risk. So, that is one. Similarly, for messenger RNA, youngsters, boys under 29, they have more cardiac issues with messenger RNA compared to others. So they may have to figure out that maybe they should not take messenger RNA and take adenovirus. Similarly, the adenovirus based vaccine in the group 50 years to 60 years um, doesn't work very well. It also doesn't work very well. And this is trial data. I'm not making it up. You can look at Johnson and Johnson's brief or watch my videos about Johnson and Johnson in the past about their FDA briefs. I believe Alaskan Americans also do not um, respond very well to this vaccine. So my point has always been that see which vaccine works better for which group, has less side effects and gives more advantage, and propose that and create a chart. FDA, CDC, they have thousands of charts for so many other. They have charts for hand washing. They never said that it becomes complicated if we tell them how to wash hands. Why would they not have a chart for vaccines? Dwight Massam says, why do you think Omicron showing up in vaccinated persons? Um, so I do not know how to parse your question. If you're saying it infects vaccinated persons as well, then all variants can infect vaccinated people. If you're saying that vaccinated people created it, then I do not know. So showing up, all variants have been showing up in vaccinated people as well. And I've discussed this many times that this is a respiratory virus. Having a vaccine will not block the virus from entering our mouth and nose. Our immune system status would depend how we respond to it. And that depends if it is in active state or not active state. Is it in trained state or not trained state, and so on. So I've done this discussion many, many times. So, have any unvaccinated shown Omicron or had Omicron? Yes. So, South Africa is 28% or lesser vaccinated. And Dr. Kutsia, her own outpatient, she said half of them were vaccinated and half were not. And they all came in with similar symptoms. Then the other doctor from the ICU, I always keep forgetting how to pronounce her last name. She said that in ICU, they're seeing people who are unvaccinated 65%, and then the remaining are one dose vaccinated or half vaccinated. So that is a kind of initial data. We need to have more data as well. So, Lindsay has a good question. So, calling them therapy, not real vaccines, isn't incorrect, just unfavorable. So, no, so I have done this discussion before as well. I just generally think it is not right to give, for example, when we say clotting occurs with the vaccine, that's a correct thing, it happens. But when we say it is a poison and it causes clotting, now every drug is a poison. But when we put it that way, that initial part dismisses the second part as well, which is a legitimate part. Now, therapy, everything that we administer is a therapy. The basic question here is it a drug? And the definition of drug is different from definition of vaccine. This vaccine, and this was messenger RNA and the definition of the vaccine, and there are a few folks on internet that have put this message forward that somehow the definition is a problem. The the role of a vaccine is to train our immune system to be able to fight the virus in the future. That is a role. So if you look at something from that perspective, whatever does that is a vaccine. However, you are actually correct as well that if we say, um, I would not say that it is not a real vaccine. It is a vaccine. It's just not the most safe vaccine, maybe. So just unfavorable and causes people to disregard their words. So generally, this is true that when we attach things like, for example, when we create a sentence and we say, this virus has never been, um, what is that? Has never been isolated. This virus has never been isolated. What are you talking about vaccines? All of a sudden, if you're saying that, hey, I'm not happy about the vaccine, that whole statement becomes discredited. So, my hope is that we know enough to make sure that when we articulate concern, that can stand and can be backed up by data instead of be dismissed. Cosmic Alien says, Barbara Warren, thank you so much. I look at that. Since Dr. Bean doesn't seem to want to answer my question, only pick on me. So I think I just answered your question. Which one was, did you have another question? This is a very good question. Starfish says, what's the evidence that vaccine cause IgA production? The immune mechanisms. Immune system works in a structure, in a hierarchy, and it works that way in all cases. The only difference is the percentage of various components activity. For example, I like the mucosal vaccines because when you expose mucosa, the wet surfaces, to some antigen, then our body produces more IgAs compared to when you introduce an antigen in the muscle, then our body actually produces less IgA, but it still produces IgA. The reason for that is that whenever we get an antigen, our body shores up our defenses. Part of that defense is the following. First of all, our B cells. So innate arm comes in and the naive T cells, helper T cells become connected. Then they go T helper 1 pathway or T helper 2 pathway. T helper 2 pathways with the antibodies, T helper 1 pathways with the cytotoxic. All of this works in various proportions as well based on various antigens. Sometimes innate arm is more heavy compared to the adaptive. Sometimes adaptive arm takes bigger role. Then within the adaptive arm, sometimes the antibody or humoral response takes a bigger chunk of the work. Sometimes cytotoxic takes a bigger bite in it. So it really, every antigen drives our immune system towards a different behavior. Having said that, normally what happens is, let's say SARS-CoV or vaccine. There is a difference though. SARS-CoV appears in our mucosal surface, so it would trigger more IgA. But SARS-CoV can kill us as well, so there is no no recommendation to go get SARS-CoV. So when the vaccine is injected in the muscle, our B cells would ultimately be triggered. They will be triggered in some lymph nodes. Those B cells will start making initial antibodies. Their initial antibodies are always IgD and IgM. This is their normal behavior. IgD they use as their receptors. They make IgD and then they stick it on their surface, and that acts like a receptor. That receptor helps them for affinity maturation in the future. IgM is released in the blood. Then the daughter cells, the copies of these cells, which are formed, when the copies are formed, some copies class switch. That means they turn off or they splice off, they cut off their gene for IgM and they expose the gene for IgG. And IgG production starts. Now, as the production is continuing, some of the cells would class switch further. Some copies, some further daughter cells would class switch. And what would happen is now we would start making IgE. This is a normal behavior. That IgE would start going around, and some of that can even get in onto the mast cell and prime them in some people, causing allergic reactions in the future. Then further class switching would occur and IgA will be produced. And the IgA is produced specially because our body thinks that there are wet surfaces that I need to protect. Plus, this may be a mother who needs to protect her child, and we need to produce IgA to go in the milk. Plus, body knows that we have a GIT, which is a very large surface as well, and I need to protect that as well. Body knows we have respiratory system, eyes, ear, nose, reproductive system. They're all wet surfaces, and it knows that I have to shore up my defenses and put antibodies there as well, like guards. So IgA production is a natural, normal behavior. The only question would be percentage of IgA. If something attacks through the immune through the mucosal surfaces, then our cells are trained to kind of make more IgA. And if it attacks through another route, then we might make less IgA, and that's it. But we will make IgA. So that is just the normal immune system behavior. This is why mucosal vaccines have an advantage. They can actually help us make more IgA and protect ourselves from catching the virus in our mucosal surfaces. Ralusek says, sent you the paper on Patreon. Thanks, Dr. Me, you're the best. Thank you very much, Ralusek, and I would look into it. Okay, so 809. Let's do one. So the high vis economist says, so if they don't tweak the vaccine for Omicron, do you think they know they are creating variants with this narrowly focused vaccine and are worried? I'm going with Geert in this one. So you have already decided who you're going with. So, so this tweaking of the vaccine, I had already said many times that, remember, Moderna had said for Delta as well that we'll go back and we'll tweak it and we'll come back with a mixture. I still remember because I admired that. I remember the word was mixture, that will create a vaccine uh, vial or packaging in which we'll have both kind of antibodies. That never happened. So even now, it just seems like people taking turns to stay in the news and say we are doing something. I don't think they're going to make it. Now that is a very different discussion to have compared to how Geared um, approaches things. So if you're with Geared's concept, sure. I have never tried to ask someone not to go with him or not go with him. So this is a good question. Ryan says, do statistics that compare ICU visits based on vaccination status provide useful information about vaccine efficacy? I rarely see media talking about underlying health conditions of persons admitted. And that is a very important thing. So There was a cool bean who went through COVID, and he was very upset that majority of the doctors he spoke with were mostly just interested in their fee. And he talked about that with me, and he was unhappy. And I was thinking, from a simple doctor to a bigger company, everyone found this out this time as an opportunity to earn and earn and earn. And this was actually a time and opportunity for people to serve and serve and serve. I don't think anybody would have died serving. This is not that kind of service. We are not standing at a border and fighting. But their service could have helped a lot of people. And I believe if they wanted to look at it from a monetary point of view, maybe they would have gotten the reward later on. But they should have jumped in with an intent to serve and take a break from an idea of earning. But that didn't happen. And it didn't happen at so many levels. So you are correct. People who are ending up in ICUs, they are vaccinated or not, many times they have comorbidities. I'm talking about those, not accidents of those, but uh, many times they have comorbidities, and that is an important factor. Jeff W says that explanation of nasal vaccine in IgA was very clear. Thanks. You're very welcome. Barbara says 11:09 Eastern. So okay, Barbara, we can stop now. Um, okay, cool. So uh, we should let folks go to sleep. So Virgil Popa says, can you explain a little the antibody dependent enhancement? And if the world gets to that, will the unvaccinated be affected in the same way as the vaccinated? So, great question. Can I request you that I have done a couple of talks about ADE? And not only the talks, in one of the talk, I have actually gone over all the mechanisms of ADE. There are five. What is it observed in which pathogens, and how does that mechanism occur? If you can please at least watch that, so that when we talk about it again, we are both on the same page, and from there we can discuss more. I would really request you if you can watch it and then we discuss. So Hemi is here as well. People's ambitions are what landed us in this mess to begin with. If ivermectin had been used, yeah, there were many things to be done. I was looking at Twitter a few days ago, and somebody had asked me a question, and then another person said, "Why are you asking Mubin this question? He peddles supplements." And I was cracking up. Peddles supplement. I am not the one who says take overdoses of supplements or take some weird supplements. I have been saying keep your vitamin C levels, vitamin D levels, vitamin E, CoQ10s correct. Keep them correct. That is actually from the medical books. I have the medical books from from biochemistry over here, where there are daily RDAs, and I talk about what is their mechanism, and those mechanisms are from here as well. So it is just so interesting that not only these discussions did not happen, but these discussion became somehow an attack on vaccines. And that in medicine had never happened before. So MCAT says, can you please answer my question above? So let's see. MCATs. Let's see, MCATs. Where is it? Where is the question? Building Maker is here as well. Building Maker says, watching Dr. Bean deep into the night's good therapy. Thank you. MCATs, where is MCAT? MCATs, I'm still trying to find your question. Margaret is here. Margaret says, it is a very long, intense intellectual and scientific workout today for you, Dr. Bean. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. I enjoy it. Oh, Columbia Bean retired. Good night, all. Good night. MCATs, you'll have to probably type your question again. So whenever you type your question, just make a copy of that so you can copy paste, but not spam. Okay, so how about we stop for today? We'll continue our discussion tomorrow as well. Um, so thank you very much. Please do me a favor. Please like, subscribe, and share. Even if you feel bad that it's a long video and you don't want to share it, subscribe and like. That tells the algorithm to go show it to other people. And the second thing is, if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can be a patron, or you can buy me a coffee, or you can use PayPal. So thank you very much, and I would see you all tomorrow.